Coming up on Network Africa. 7 people killed in suicide bombing at a cafe in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. Kenya's High Court suspends impeachment of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Plus, former African National Congress spokesperson Pule Mabe and 6 others granted bail in a 27 million rand corruption case. Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Somalia, where at least 7 people have been killed and 6 others injured after a suicide bomber detonated an unidentified device at a cafe outside a police training school in the capital, Mogadishu. According to police, both officers and civilians were among the victims who had been drinking tea outside the General Kahiye Police Academy on Thursday. The armed group linked to Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, has claimed responsibility for the attack. The group frequently targets military and state institutions in its efforts to overthrow Somalia's government, which has launched an ongoing offensive against it. We're in Kenya now, where the High Court has issued temporary orders to stop the replacement of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Now, this is the latest in a series of dramatic events rocking the country's politics. Just this morning, Kenya's President William Ruto had nominated Interior Minister Kithure Kindiki as the new Deputy President, and this was unanimously approved by Parliament. The replacement came hours after the Senate voted to impeach Mr. Gachagua. However, Nairobi High Court has suspended the impeachment and also Mr. Kindiki's swearing in. These orders are to remain in place until October 24, when the case will be discussed again by a group of judges to be selected by the Chief Justice Kume. All of this is coming after a period of political turmoil and mass protests in Kenya. Mr. Gachagua was impeached in absentia while in hospital on 5 out of 11 charges that includes a gross violation of the Constitution and stirring ethnic hatred.
Accordingly, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, EGH, ceases to hold office.
There's a lot of unhappiness with the government, not because of its ineptitude or incapacity to handle things, but the appearance that it is involved in committing the wrongs is what has got people very angry. Now, how to divert attention from this anger is you pick a fight and get somebody to blame for it. And the deputy president, who has different expectations, very ambitious, wrongly, sometimes he does things that look immature. And since he has a tendency to be mature, it's easy to blame him for something.
But still in Kenya, an invasive species of bird known as the Indian house crow has become a growing threat to poultry farmers along the coast of Kenya. As a result, some farmers like Dancing Safari have given up on rearing chickens. However, scientists believe they have found a solution to Indian house crow multiplication. Well, in South Africa, former African National Congress spokesperson Pule Mabe and 6 others have each been granted bail of 30,000 rand after appearing in court for charges on fraud and corruption. The 7 suspects, including local government officials and Pule Mabe's wife, are facing fraud and corruption charges. The defendants appeared in court following an investigation into a 27 million rand government tender. The investigation found that 5 years ago, the provincial government in Gauteng signed a contract with a company named Enviromobi for waste management services. A police statement says Enviromobi did not disclose that it had links to ex-ANC spokesperson who was a member of parliament at the time. Well, let's get more on this. Joining us now is our correspondent in South Africa, Innocent Samosa. Hello, Innocent. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Layo. It's very good to see you, and good evening to our viewers around the world.
Now, talk to us about the court proceedings that happened, that granted bail to Paul Mabe and also his co-accused Pule Mabe. I beg your pardon.
Indeed, Layo, another blow for the African National Congress. You would recall that a few months ago, the former Minister of Sports, that is Zizi Kodwa, was also embroiled in some corruption scandal. And before that, it was the Speaker of the National Assembly, that is Mapisa Ngakula, who was, of course, found to have, pocketed around 2.5 million rands worth of bribes. And that, of course, that case was moved to December. The latest one, as you rightly indicated, is the former spokesperson of the ANC, that is Pule Mabe, who was accused, of course, with other six. They were granted bail. They appeared at the Palm Ridge Magistrate Court. They were granted 30,000 bail each, the other six people. As you rightly indicated, Layo, amongst them, it's his wife, LC Mabe. But just to give our viewers a context as to why we find ourselves here today, the case or these issues stem from 2016 when a company called KG Media, it was trading as Invero Mobi. It's owned by the former spokesperson of the ANC, Pule Mabe. They were then awarded a tender of 27 million rands by the Gauteng Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. And the agreement there, Layo, was that they will not actually get the money until they deliver the job. And it was found that around 25 million rands was paid to this Invero company. And then we do know again that Pule Mabe said that he was not part of the company then. He said that he was in parliament when this whole thing happened because he can't do business with the state when he's a member of parliament. So he said that he had to basically recuse himself from the company's doings. So but again, Layo, the sad part about this whole issue is that this whole thing, it happens when Pule Mabe is actually celebrating his anniversary with his wife. I would imagine it must have been difficult for him to celebrate their love, and now they're embroiled in these kinds of challenges. But we do know now, Layo, that he since stepped aside from the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress. He said that he called the Secretary General of the ANC that he would like to meet with the Integrity Commission of the ANC so he can give his side of the story. But also he's adamant that he is innocent until proven otherwise. Layo?
Indeed, but what can we, expect in the coming days? And if found guilty, what consequences are they likely to face?
The reality is that if he's found guilty, he will then have to go to jail, but is unlikely to happen, Layo. We've not seen a huge prominent figure in the African National Congress, apart from former President Jacob Zuma. We've not seen a big leader in the African National Congress who have really gone to jail for corruption, wearing yellow overalls. And that has been a cry from a lot of citizens that we had State Capture Commission of Inquiry, but still there's no leader who is implicated in the State Capture Commission of Inquiry who is in jail today. And there are talks that the evidence from the State Capture Commission of Inquiry is missing. So the MPA is going back and forth to really try to get that evidence so that it can try to prosecute people. But again, it does seem as though a lot of the ANC leaders embroiled in a lot of corruption. And again, they would have to step aside, majority of them, simply because this is in accordance with the policy of the African National Congress, that if someone is found wanting, if a member of the ANC is found wanting, or they're being investigated by the courts, they would then have to step aside until they are cleared so that they can continue with their duties of parliament or their duties of the party. But if he's found indeed that he did all of this, it's linked to him, then he would have to face the music, like.
Indeed. And how do South Africans, feel about this, the fight against corruption in the country and the different cases that, you have also mentioned?
I think it has brought a bit of business confidence in the country because investors, they realize that indeed institutions are still intact in the country where if people are corrupt, they can actually be held accountable. So in a business sense, it does really put the country in a very good space. But also, the government of national unity, you would remember, Layo, that after the elections, there was no outright majority winner. So ANC had to call other political parties to form a super coalition. Some call it a super coalition, but the president says that it's the government of national unity. So that also, it has brought ministers to really work hard. And in that, I mean, Layo, that the ministers are now accessible because now it's a competition, because it's different political parties fighting to be relevant, fighting to be in cabinet. So ministers now are working, ministers now are doing oversight. So it does seem as though the wheels of justice also on the other side are starting to turn. So I think also going back to what I said about business sentiment, it does put the country in a very, very good position because it seems as though the institutions are intact, Lion.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Innocent Samosa, our correspondent in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Thank you so much, colleague.
Oh, an update now on the tanker fire that rocked Jigawa State here in Nigeria 2 days ago. The federal government has instructed the Federal Road Safety Commission to investigate the cause of the explosion that has now claimed the lives of 170 people. Secretary to Government of the Federation, George Akume, stated this when he visited the state to condole with the government and people of the state. Mr. Akume, who was received and accompanied by the Jigawa State Governor to commiserate with some of the victims of the tanker explosion that are receiving treatment at various hospitals, also conveyed President Bola Tinubu's condolences. Well, Channels Television's correspondent Nanchin Vincent joins us now for more updates. She is in Jigawa State. Hello, Nanchin. It's been 2 days since the tanker explosion in the state. The town seemed to be settling down from the disasters and families regretting that their loved ones have died this way. You have been speaking to injured people, that are recovering in the hospital from the explosion. How do they remember events from that day?
Yes, I spoke with one of the victims, Adamu, who was burnt from his head to toe, and he still had the strength to speak with us. And he said that all he could remember was the explosion, and he ran on his feet. He said nobody took him to the hospital or anything like that. He has always been on his feet until he began to feel the pain. And that was when he knew that, okay, this is more serious than he thought. He actually was not amongst those that were scooping the fuel. He said he just went to see because a lot of people were taking pictures of the accident, and that was how he got himself into this very unfortunate incident.
Well, I'm sure that, more fuel tankers have entered the state since this disaster. What measures are being taken to ensure it does not reoccur?
Yes, earlier on today, I was speaking with Dr. Haruna Megida, that is the executive secretary of SEMA in the state. And he told me that one of the things they are doing is to go into houses, because when this accident happened, people came scooping. Some of them had scooped and left, and some of them had to come back, scoop, So there are some fuel that are, stored somewhere in houses, which also poses danger to their lives. And so they are going about ensuring from house to house that this fuel is retrieved and, done away with, so that there will be no repeat of a carnage in Maja community.
Thank you so much, Nanchin Vincent in Jigawa there for us. We'll take a break now on the program, still to come. Diversity, leadership and innovation dominates discussions at the Empowering Women in Tech conference hosted by French Tech Lagos. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. The White House says U.S. President Joe Biden will be visiting Angola in early December after postponing his first ever visit to sub-Saharan Africa. And this was to be able to deal with Hurricane Milton recovery efforts at home. Well, speaking during a regular press briefing, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said that the Angola visit will celebrate the transformation of the U.S.-Angola relationship, and President Biden will meet with President João Lourenço.
Some additional news. In the first week of December, the president will travel to Angola, where he will celebrate the transformation of the U.S.-Angola relationship, recognize Angola's role as a strategic partner and regional leader, and meet with President Lourenço about ways to increase our collaboration on security, health, and economic partnerships. The value of strong alliances and partnerships in the defense of freedom has never resonated more in Europe, in Africa, and beyond. These visits demonstrate the president's unwavering commitment to revitalize these relationships for our shared security and prosperity.
The UN Human Rights Agency is calling on Tunisian authorities to protect the country's democratic processes and uphold fundamental freedoms. This is coming after a presidential campaign marred by a crackdown on the opposition, independent activists and journalists in the weeks leading up to the election, which was held on the 6th of October. Spokesperson Liz Russell says Tunisia should embark on a much-needed rule of law reforms in line with international human rights law, including with regard to freedoms of expression, assembly, and association.
Volker Turk today called on the Tunisian authorities to protect the country's democratic processes and uphold fundamental freedoms after a presidential campaign marred by a crackdown on the opposition, independent activists and journalists. In the weeks leading up to the election, which was held on the 6th of October, over 100 prospective candidates, members of their campaigns and other political figures were arrested on a variety of charges, ranging from falsification of electoral paperwork to charges related to national security. Such cases are troubling. Their trials indicate a lack of respect for due process and fair trial guarantees. We strongly urge Tunisia to recommit to transitional justice in the interests of victims and to embark on much-needed rule of law reforms in line with international human rights law, including with regard to freedoms of expression, assembly and association. We also call for the release of all those arbitrarily detained.
Well, in an era where innovation drives progress, empowering women in tech industry is not just important, it's quite essential if we want a more inclusive future. Now, that's the reason behind the Empowering Women in Tech conference hosted by French Tech Lagos, with support from the French Tech Missions Community Fund, bringing together leaders to discuss diversity, leadership, and innovation.
I just want to hammer on the point of
the Empowering Women in Tech conference, organized by French Tech Lagos with the support of Mission French Tech, brings together female leaders and innovators for an important dialogue on diversity, leadership, and innovation in tech.
We have Lele, we have Kemi, Olajide.
This marks the first edition of what will become an annual event aimed at driving progress in gender equality, inclusivity, and the empowerment of women in the tech space. The statistics are sobering. The World Economic Forum estimates it will take 131 years to achieve full parity at the current rate. For women working in tech today, waiting more than a century is a timeline that feels far too long. But events like this are one part of the solution. In this room, there's a palpable sense of feminine energy and a shared resolve to change. The Consul General of France in Lagos speaks passionately about key areas of collaboration between France and Nigeria. His speech also touches on the need to set the balance right between men and women in the tech industry.
According to the 2023 report of the World Economic Forum, on gender equality, Nigeria is ranked 130th out of 146 countries. This underscores the imperative for the continued fight or combat collective efforts to enhance gender equality and gender inclusivity.
The conference features two stimulating panel discussions. The first panel looks at how investments can act as a catalyst for gender equality and inclusion in tech, while the second shifts the focus to women's leadership in sustainable innovation, especially in driving social and environmental impact in Africa.
I think, the first thing is how do we expunge and change that mindset, that subconscious bias, how do we remove that, right? I think that's one of the key issues that we're seeing that, that starts from birth and, all the way through to when you're an adult and, you then have to be more conscious of how do you, sort of separate that thought process from what the reality is? Because, not including women in any sector, specifically tech, is leaving money on the table.
There's a lack of investment readiness in female-led startups, but I think that comes from the systemic issues that we're discussing, right? And I think that's where mentorship comes into play. That's where, when we think about tech, we often think about STEM jobs, right? But there's so much more to the tech ecosystem than just being an engineer or just being somebody who is in the science or tech aspect of it.
Now, one thing that the tech ecosystem could do to bolster the confidence which women could display in such rooms would be to send money their way. If a woman is sure that if I get into this industry, I get into this sector, there is some resources allocated for me, it would really, really bolster the confidence of a lot of women. It will send a signal.
Investors would definitely invest in those type of companies because data speak for themselves. They know that they will make more money where there's a women-led business, and they make those investments to make money. So they will go for the women. And my perspective is more like we need to start with education.
It's a conversation that highlights not just the importance of gender parity, but also how women are leading the charge in creating solutions for a more sustainable future. The commitment to gender parity from the French Tech Mission is clear, and the success of this inaugural conference sets the stage for future editions, which will aim to push the boundaries of inclusion and leadership in tech.
That's where we draw the curtains on the program for today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde. Have a lovely weekend.